In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I'm humbled for Abuna to invite me to the Edge group. It's been a couple of years since I was with the Edge group at the convention. Yeah.
We'll not allow this to happen again, Abuna.
Never to have me again. Yes, I know.
We'll not allow to have this big gap.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
The gap, Abuna.
لا يا أبونا العفو يا أبونا لا. The topic that I was asked to kind of talk with you about, not to you, but with you, which is very important to understand my style. I'm not the type that, I'm not a good speaker, I'm a very lousy speaker actually, so the best way for me to hide how poor of a speaker I am is to engage the audience. So you get ready to participate in this topic because it's a very interesting topic. Pronouns, and we've added to be or not to be. Well, before we talk about pronouns, I think we have to start with where did pronouns come from. So I guess it's safe for us to understand that life is different nowadays. Things are not as simple and straightforward as it used to be, as we've known it. Things are changing at a very, very fast rate. Every time I talk about this topic, and I don't know how I ended up with this particular topic, but we spoke about it a couple of times during the Fathers meeting, and then I spoke again in Toronto about it, and now the third time, so I'm not sure if God has a plan, if He thinks that I can speak about this, but it's every time I prepare or every time I update even my slides, there is so much that has happened since then. It's very hard to keep up to date with what's going on. So gender identity in general is I guess, the foundational topic of how pronouns came about. The issue of pronouns came about from this gender diversity that's going on. And gender diversity has evolved over the years, for those of you who follow the topic. It started with binary folks and defining who are binary folks and non-binary folks. That was the simplest thing that we could remember. And then it evolved into this very interesting and very complicated matrix. And it continues to become harder and harder for people to even understand or to keep up to date with the expressions that are being used. To summarize it, one of the expressions that came about maybe 2 years ago is gender fluidity. Gender fluidity is something you might have heard. Anybody heard that expression before? Yeah, gender fluidity says, enough of trying to identify who you are. You have the right to keep changing this as frequently as you want. So this, as of last August, this was the most complicated concept. So as soon as we started understanding what that means, which promotes people to continue to change their gender and their identity on a different basis in terms of time. What made things more complex as I was preparing the talk last August is a professor in the US. I'm going to give you her name because it was all over the news. Diane Ehrensaft. Diane Ehrensaft is actually the director of mental health. She's the chief psychologist at the University of California, San Diego. Children's Hospital Gender Development Center. They have a Gender Development Center at the University of California, San Francisco. And she is the director of that unit of mental health and psychology. She came up in August with a new expression that added to the complexity. So we thought gender fluidity was hard enough to understand. She came up with a new expression that is now sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm fluid. Flexible. بلاش عشان ما تفهمش غلط. So in August, she came up with this expression that made things even more fluid. She said, children can adopt being gender hybrids. Gender hybrids. What does that mean? Gender fluidity, I think it took us a while to understand what it means. It means that I can change my gender, and gender is different than sex. Sex is how you were born, the organ itself, and whether you are a male or a female. And the government of Canada, even if you saw the last census and all the documentation, there are questions that says, what is your sex and what is your gender? They separated the two. So the gender hybrids adds this very new approach that says you can actually be more than one gender at the same time. You can actually adopt one gender for your top half and a different gender for your bottom. One gender in the front, one gender in the back. So this is what they are actually this is the type of research that is being channeled down through schools. So the reason I started with the gender fluidity is this is one of the ways we can critique the whole concept of pronouns. Why am I saying that? Because Bill C-16, again, we're going to talk a little bit legal so that at least you understand if you are employed in the workplace. It's important for you to understand what are your legal obligations. So it took me a while to try to figure out the legal aspects of things. Bill C-16 was passed in June of 2017. Bill C-16 basically adds the term gender identity and expression to three areas: the Human Rights Code and 2 sections of the Criminal Code in terms of punishments for people who. So the first one was in the Human Rights Act, joining a list of identifiable groups as protected from discrimination. These groups include age, race, sex, religion, and gender. So gender has now become one of the things that you cannot discriminate against. In the second point, or the second part where this was updated, in the Criminal Code that targets hate speech. So defined as advocating genocide and the public enticement of hatred. Third, it was added to a section of the Criminal Code dealing with sentencing for hate crimes. If there is evidence that an offense is motivated by bias, prejudice, or hate, it can be taken into account by the courts during sentencing. So this is where Bill 16 came into play. Bill 16 did not mention anything about pronouns. This was about gender and discrimination of people based on their identified gender. It didn't come up with pronouns. So you might say, where did pronouns come from? It actually came from Ontario. All the good things come from Ontario usually. It's in the Ontario Human Rights Commission in 2014, January 31st, 2014, came up with a new policy. And this new policy on page 18 reads the following: gender-based harassment can involve, and they list, I think, 10 items. Number 5 is refusing to refer to a person by their self-identified name and proper personal pronoun. This is where pronouns started to become known to people through this document, this policy that was issued on January 31st, 2014. This policy is non-binding. This policy does not impact the criminal code, does not have an impact on the criminal code. So it's important to understand that this is a guiding document. However, since federally there was nothing that mentions pronouns, legal experts, one of them is a professor at the University of Toronto, says, well, in the case of a serious complaint, the judge may refer to this policy, which is Ontario-based, even federally, to base a judgment on this type of discrimination. So this is the kind of legal aspect of pronouns. I wanted you to know what is the legal aspect. There is no law per se that says you are expected or you have to disclose your pronoun. This is something that the workplace has evolved into over time, but from a legal perspective, this is not a binding thing. The next expression that we want to distinguish between is gender inclusive and gender neutral. Gender inclusive and gender neutral. Gender inclusive is if I want to talk about your family doctor and I don't know who he or she is, so I will refer to them as he or she. This is gender neutral because I am unable to know what the gender of this person that I'm referring to. I don't know them, so I'm referring to them in an absolute term, inclusive, that includes everything. Gender neutral is a different slant. Gender neutral is you have to be neutral in terms of what gender reference you refer to a person. You cannot pick, even if you know who they are or how they identify, you're not expected to overrule them in that aspect. So again, these are terms for those of you who are in the workplace. You might see them in HR policies, you might see them in things like that. It's important for us to identify. How many pronouns exist, do you think?
10?
How many?
Like 10 right now, but
Do you know what they are?
no.
I honestly had no idea when I started researching this topic. There are 8 pronouns out there. So the subject is she, he, those are the common. Z, C, E, which is EY, V, VE, T, TEY, and E, just a letter E. These are all pronouns that people can identify with. I tried my best to understand what are the differences. You have a question or you have a comment?
Yes, so the pronoun, in terms of the genders itself, I think is over like 40 of those.
Oh, 64. There are 64. I have them here. No, but the pronouns, I'm talking about the pronouns. When I want to refer to you, should I say he or she? I discovered there are 8 different ones with the Z, C, E, V, T, E. At first I thought these were Greek, because these are usually engineering background and so forth. Eta, zeta, but it's. I try to understand what do they refer to, or how do you distinguish between one and the other. Apparently there is no difference. It's he or she, and everything else is optional for everybody to choose. Non-binary. Everybody non-binary gets to choose one of these pronouns. So the question that I table to everyone is, okay. Yes, Puna.
So it's a question. So how about them and they? This.
Yeah, them and they could be the combination of he and she. Yeah, and he and she.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are still part of the.
Yeah, but non-binary are those. The subject is Z. The object, which is supposedly her, is Zim. The possessive is Zir. This is not the Zir, I guess, the Zir that you drink from in Egypt. No, this. Thyself. It's common. It's public. Yani, if you ever research pronouns, the challenge is, what if I want to be referred to as V? Because today my gender identity that I want to associate with is V. If we subscribe to the concept of gender fluidity, then I might be he in the afternoon. So how is anyone expected to keep track of my preference in the way I am addressed? I think that's the biggest challenge that we have, in addition to all kinds of other challenges. But we're talking logical here. We're not talking religious. We're not talking scripture. We're not talking anything. We're talking logic. If I have the ability to change my gender identity on a daily basis, who's good? And it's fluid. It's infinite. Who's going to keep track of infinite ways of addressing a human being? Talking about a single human being. If they have the ability to change that all the time, why is it on everyone else to keep track of how they want to be referred? And this has nothing to do with respect. I want to make this very clear. It's not about we are disrespecting people. We are obligated to love everyone, and we are obligated to respect everyone. But there is a point where you'd say, how far is too far? I think that's the challenge that society is facing today. How far is too far? How far have we gone from the basic understanding of how to manage a workplace? So these pronouns become challenging, I guess, for us in a couple of scenarios. And I wanted to run maybe a small workshop, but I wasn't sure what the format is. I'm sorry, I should have asked. But I would say the reason you picked this topic is probably you have an issue in the workplace. You probably want to figure out, is it okay for me to refer to somebody as Z, if that's what they want to be referred to as. I assume these are the questions on your mind, and that's why you picked this topic. We can either do it together as a group, or we can divide two groups, however Abuna prefers.
We can break into 2 or even 4 groups if it's
Sure. So I'll give you the 2 questions or the 2 scenarios, and you can come up with further questions later on. But the first scenario, you work for a government organization, and your manager asks you to include your pronoun in the email signature. They asked you to include your pronoun in the email signature. You explain to your manager that you are a binary she. You are a she, and you're referred to as a she. So there is no need for you to identify as anything else. That should be the default. Okay? I'm not non-binary, and as such, I don't need to ask people to refer to me with anything other than the standard she or her. But your manager reprimands you and asks you to follow their instructions so as not to create issues among the team members. What would you do? Having a challenge with a manager saying, I am binary, I'm a she, I don't need to put my pronoun. I don't see the need for me to kind of add that to my email signature. And your manager says, you shall do that, because you are not going to be the only one, or it's not up to you. We want the whole team to be consistent. So what would you do? What would your answer be? I think that's one scenario. The second activity, or the second scenario, is your manager is biologically male, but he identifies as non-binary. And they like to be referred to as Z, Z-I-E. You struggle with this notion, and it is obvious that you struggle to even remember how to address him, or Z, with the different iterations of Z. He believes you are intentionally humiliating him because of your religious background. So he confronts you during your annual performance review and asks you point blank, do you have an issue with my gender identity? Do you have an issue with my gender identity? You seem to struggle to call me how I want to be called. Why? How would you respond? If we're going to break into a third one, this is a scenario that I heard yesterday in my home visits. A business owner, he owns a clinic. He has staff that works there. He's the manager of the clinic. He owns the clinic. Staff told him, hey, we want to add pronouns to our emails, to our email signature. And he said, I struggled, Abuna, to figure out what to do. These are my staff, and I don't subscribe to this, but I've been put in a situation where I've been asked, we want you to, and you put this as a rule for all of us to put our pronouns. What should he do? And the answer is not for you to leave and say, we don't like that. You have to come up with some answers. So why don't we break up? Let Abuna break us up into 3 groups. Why don't we regroup? Team 3 then?
Team 2.
The team 2. Oh, that's 3 into 3. Okay, who are the spokespeople for team number 1? Who did you choose? Team number 1? Team number 1, hello.
Team number 1, are you the spokesperson?
No, I'm not the spokesperson, but I was.
Who is the spokesperson for team number 1? Tahan, okay. So I got a comment to please speak loud so that the people at the back can hear you. So if you can define the scenario and the conversation and how would you address that scenario, that would be great. Oh. Hi guys.
I think our scenario was to put, we were asked by our boss to put the pronoun on the email address, and we were kind of told to do that. Some people in my group raised the point of if this was not in writing, we don't have to follow what the boss was saying. But regardless, I think we have a consensus to say that everybody agrees that it is not binding. If I choose to not to include my pronoun in my email, that's up to me. It's not something that it's mandatory that I have to add it on. And eventually we said, like, with more science and research, it's new, but it should eventually go away. Just a matter of out of respect to those people who wanted to be told or to have this pronoun or to want to be told a certain way, out of respect to them, there's no problem or it's not against our religion to identify them the way they want us to be identified, as long as we are not participating or agreeing to the way they are behaving, which is sometimes could be against our religion, against our beliefs. Anybody else?
It's usually coming as a recommendation, not as a requirement.
Do you mind if you stand up so that the people at the back can hear you?
That usually these requests are framed as like a recommendation and not a requirement. And like usually, yeah, you don't have to if you don't want to. And then over time, like in a job per se, it tends to be like the least priority in like a company, and like think people forget about it. They go on to like what is the pressing issue. Like at the end of the day, a company is there to like see clients or make money, so it's like the least
of the priorities?
Yeah.
Well, this was a government agency, so they have time. I guess they will have time.
Wasting taxpayer.
Good job. Any comments from teams 2 or 3 on what you heard from team number 1?
I have questions.
Yeah.
If this is the start, like it starts with pronoun, what else are they going to get you to do after? I find that it's a very progressive ideology.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I find that there are certain people who take a stand and say no, because they don't want it to progress further. If we continue to comply with these little things and we say no, where are we going to end up in years?
Bye, guys. Nice to see you. Bye. I actually don't know them, but that's okay. Yeah. So I guess your point is it's better to make a stand now and say no, so that when things progress.
When is it going to end?
Nobody knows when it's going to end. To be honest with you, you're absolutely right. Things are progressing in a very fluid way, if I may use that term. But these are realities that you will face in the workplace. So how do you balance between your value system, your faith, and your obligation to a respectful workplace, for example. And that's why team number 2 has a very interesting challenge. This is the manager now is telling you, sitting you down during a performance review and saying, do you have an issue with my gender? Do you have an issue? I completely agree with you in praying that this trend doesn't continue to evolve in such a destructive manner to society. However, we can pray, but tomorrow we'll be in the workplace, and tomorrow we'll be asked to do things that we don't completely agree with. So this is the whole point of the discussion: is how do we as Christians act in a way that does not give away our faith or compromise our faith and beliefs, but at the same time be active members of society in a way that does not create problems for us individually. That's the balance that we are discussing today. Let's ask team number 2 to talk, because that's a very interesting scenario. So if you can describe the scenario, Anthony, please.
Okay, thank you. So for team number 2, our scenario was like Abuna said, you are in a performance review and your manager is there, and I don't even know what to say, he or she. The person brings up and asks, do you have an issue with my pronoun? And also we mentioned that the person knows that you're a Christian and that you have traditional values, and so they're asking you point blank, this is my pronoun, and do you have an issue with the pronoun, and how would you respond to that? There was some discussion around it. Some points were brought up, they would need to prove that you have issues with the pronoun, right? Like, so if they are accusing you of something, then you need proof. But one was saying, no, they're not necessarily accusing you. They're asking you, do you have a problem with my pronoun? And so what's the best way to respond in that scenario? Any answers, I guess? I'll ask, but Abuna brought up a good point, and I think we came to the consensus that when you talk to the person by their name, then that's a way to, I guess, cool the situation down, because you can tell them that your gender or your pronoun is personal to you, and I don't want to get involved in that, but I will call you by your name. And I think that kind of is a good way to cool down the situation, and it doesn't escalate. Because as Abuna was saying, I think sometimes the intent behind questions of, do you have a problem with my pronoun or a problem with my gender, I think the intent behind that is they want you to say, I'm a Christian and God made man and you're a female and this and that, because they want you to go down that route so that there's a conflict and that they can say, well, you are discriminating against me because of your belief. And so you don't want to get caught in a corner, and you kind of, this way you turn the table around where it's like, I will call you by your name. Your gender, your pronoun is personal to you, and I'm going to call you by your name. Nothing wrong with that. You're not doing anything against your faith. You're not doing anything against anybody. And you're not even offending the person. I mean, you're calling them by their name. But I brought up a scenario, what if the person says that their name is this in the afternoon and their name is something else in the morning, but then you can just say, where's your driver's license? And I'm going to call you by the name of your driver's license.
That's hopefully the one thing that doesn't change with seasons or every few hours. There's a legal document. Excellent. Thank you, Anthony. Any comments? Yes, Abuna.
Though I'm not a confrontative person, but I think this is, I see this as kind of an attack or a switch from the purpose of the performance appraisal.
Yes.
So a response could be, I don't think this is a proper question or discussion during my performance appraisal, and this is a situation where the person, if the person is in a position of doing my appraisal, then there is a power differential here. So the person is using the power differential to their advantage to ask me a question that is not related to the performance appraisal. So I could bounce it back as, I don't think this is appropriate to ask me this question in a performance appraisal, and I would like to stick to our performance appraisal strictly, and maybe if there, that's it.
Very nice. I'll play devil's advocate here.
Yes. I said from the beginning, I'm not a confronted. But here it can be.
The only reason I want to know if you have a problem with my gender is you work in customer support. If you have a problem with my gender, you may end up having a problem with customers because of their gender, and that is going to impact your performance as an employee and impact the performance of the organization. I'm not asking you because I want to know how you think of me in person. I want to know that you will be respectful to customers, and I want you to demonstrate that in the way you address me. That's
absolutely, but your initial question was different than this. So now you're changing the question from being personal.
You get an A+ and a bonus pay for your performance review.
To something, and maybe this we should be discussed away from the performance appraisal.
Perfect.
To maybe add it to the performance appraisal, and of course I would have utmost respect to you and the customers, the clients who are calling me.
Excellent. And another good answer to that is, well, if this is something that concerns you in terms of the overall performance of the organization, are you asking the same question of every team member?
Yes.
I hope I'm not the only one being asked that, because if you're concerned about how we as a customer support team address customers and embrace customers' gender identity, I hope you're asking the same question of every team member during their performance review.
And maybe we can take it to the next level. You get the feedback from the customers that are meeting with you, raising this issue that I'm not respectful.
Yeah, no, I never got any feedback. I'm using myself because you know I am non-binary, and you've struggled to call me Z when I put it in my email. You still I feel you twitch when you come to address me. So I wanted to just know where and I know you're Christian, so I just wanted to know whether this is of any sort an obstacle in you performing your job effectively. And the answer that the team came up with is flip the table. Flip the table. Say your gender, how you identify, which pronoun you pick is completely yours. Yours. My relationship with you as a manager and an employee is respectful. I would like to call you with your name. Do you have an issue with that? So he was asking me a question. I now turned the table and asked him the question. Do you have an issue with me calling you Anthony? They better say no. Because why would they say no to that? Great job, teams 1 and 2. Okay, team 3. Number 3, the business owners, they're not necessarily rich.
That's a question though. Well, going back to that question, let's say, for example, well, I heard you talking at the water cooler with other co-worker, and you were, I heard you say about the manager, he said this. So clearly you weren't using the phone. It's like, so what do you say?
I would say, okay, I will do my best to remember to address you with your name. Sometimes I slip. Sometimes this is how I'm 29 years old, so for the last 29 years, I'm used to this. I'm just adding 10 years to my age, just to inflate it a bit. I'm more used to the binary approach, but I'll make a point from now on to remember to call you by your name. So. Plus, I'm not usually at the water cooler because I drink coffee. So you might have heard someone else. Team number 3. The spokesperson to team number 3, please. Rich business person, owns multiple pharmacies and clinics. He is?
He's a prince. His name is Amir, so he's a prince.
Oh, okay. Prince of the Prince Enterprise. It's a big conglomerate that has offices and clinics and كل حاجة. You are the big boss. Okay, go ahead.
So as a business owner, of course, it actually reflects back on the business because this is something that have been affecting the team. This is going to be actually causing issues like inside the work environment between people and create a lot of conflicts. And if it's regarding patients, if this was a clinic, then it actually gonna cause repulsion from the patient and actually negative reviews, negative recommendation not to go to the clinic and stuff. And this is a service industry, so we need like more or less to abide with what the community stands for or what the community thinks. So we are more, under the edge of the sword somehow. However, it depends on the situation. Like if the situation regarding the team, like part of the team, it's gonna be see what's who's actually in a problem or in a conflict and try to deal with those.
Yeah.
Maybe team selection first of all, like whoever is coming, not to be refusing anyone, but try to choose people that more gonna, as they say it here, they're gonna be fitting the work culture or fitting the work or fitting the team. Maybe I'm just thinking.
Yeah, careful. Careful there. Yeah. أنت أمير مش مدير. أنت أمير مش مدير.
And I think, and Allah Alam.
Yeah.
There's no issue with calling whoever wants to be heard with whatever they want, they are demanding. Because when it comes to my belief is solid, and we should be treating everyone with empathy and with kindness. And since this is a part of living in that broken world and part of the devil's plan, just to try to plant a lot of confusion,
Yes.
and then take a lot of people out of bloodshed and big areas. So we need to actually respect everyone, and just like the verse that says, being a Jew to Jews, or being the same person, that represent that.
Okay.
That people just to try to gather everyone to Jesus Christ. But if it's mandatory, then we need to act promptly on it. But if it's not, then if there's a room of a conversation, just to constructive, constructive basis, just to solve the issue.
Okay.
Allah.
Yeah. So. Excellent answer. Just a few observations on the answer. You might have noticed that scenario says you're a business owner and you have a big team, and one team member came to you with that request. So first of all, yes, you want to be open to the notion, but if you have 90 employees, big enterprise, and one of them requested that, do you feel that you have an obligation to take that? ها؟
هاخده ثيرابي انا وهو، احنا الاثنين ثيرابي.
تاخد ابونا ثيرابي؟
لا العفو لا، ده الشخص ده اللي في الانتربرايز يعني.
هم يعملوا هنا كده في ميسيساجا ابونا؟ لا ابونا،
لا انا هاخده ونروح
انا
لمنى.
خاف اجي هنا تاني يعني.
لا العفو. لا هاخده ونروح لمنى ثيرابي ان شاء الله.
So, as a business owner, you have no obligation to comply with the request of one individual within your organization. First of all, as I said, Bill C-16 does not talk about pronouns whatsoever. So, you have no obligation as a business owner to enforce. Right. So, the way I would answer it is, oh, great idea. You're one of 90, so I don't know if the rest of the team would be open to the idea or not. Maybe this is something we can discuss at our next team meeting. Why don't you propose it in the next team meeting and we'll see who is in favor of this idea. That one way of doing it.
Wouldn't that fire things
مش هيطلع من الميتنج.
Pardon?
Wouldn't that like fire things up?
ما هو chances are if he or she came to you with this request, where's the water cooler person? The water cooler. This must have been going around and they probably pushed this person to come and talk to the businessman. The other way of doing it is you can say, well, it's up to you. As a business, we're not going to mandate that every employee who has an email address adds their pronoun. But it's up to you if you want to add it. I, as a business owner, will not stop you. I will not stop you. Means, it's up to you. But I'm not going to mandate it on everybody else. I'm not going to enforce it on everybody else. بس انت راجل مانجر طيب قوي يعني. طب what if I come to you in June and I say I want to put the rainbow flag in your business?
هديهوله يعلقه في الاوضه عنده هنا.
لا انا عايز في الانترنس بتاع البيزنس.
مش حضانه هي يا ابونا.
مش حضانه. Very good answer. Very good answer. ربنا يحافظ عليك. Yes, Anthony.
So I have a question. It might not be directly related, but so there's medications now that are covered by the government for gender changes, and there's even now surgery. If you work for the federal government, like the Trudeau government, is going to support you up to $70,000 or something. This was like a new announcement. So these are coming from tax dollars.
Yeah.
So some people are concerned, myself included, is like our tax dollars are supporting this, and so what would is the best stance in that regard? I mean, there is the statement in the Bible where it says, "Give to Caesar what's Caesar, and give to God what's God."
Yeah.
So I think, would that be adequate answer in that situation?
Are you being asked that question, or you're asking us what do we think?
So as a person, if you're not comfortable, you have to pay your taxes, right? So it's like
we live in a democracy.
Yeah.
We reap what we sow. So people who get into office because people go out and vote for them.
Yeah.
So we end up getting who we vote for, not necessarily who we voted for, but the majority of people who voted for them. So your ability to overrule the direction of the government is very tough. Is very tough. Where it becomes more critical, I would say, if you want to pick a fight, I don't think the fight is why would you cover gender surgeries when you don't cover LASIK eye surgery, for example. This is something that is more common and so forth. I would focus our collective energy around what happens in schools. That is the most in my opinion, that is the most critical area that requires advocacy and pressure. Because this is where the kids are confused. You are confusing generations to come. So let them spend the money on surgeries, fine. But what I would fight is, what are you teaching kids in school? And do I have the choice as a parent to avoid these teachings in the school? This is the ultimate discussion point that I think we as a church and as a congregation should be huddling around this particular issue. How do we protect our children from this poisonous teachings that they are giving them in schools? Yes. Sorry, I can barely hear you, sorry.
We know that other communities are very loud in expressing their disapproval or their disagreement with what's happening. But I'm just asking a question here. Does the Coptic community have a unified voice, and this voice is loud enough to go out there and say, hey, the Coptic community is so big about this, and this is how? Are we unified on this? I'm sure we are.
Yeah.
Are we united in the voice to stand against to kind of voice our things?
Very good question. I think, بعد إذن أبونا يعني, in my humble opinion, this is a three-legged stool. Three-legged stool. The first one is advocacy and public relations and making sure that our voice is at least clear. And the diocese, through the guidance of His Grace Bishop Mina, has published a letter that is clear in what the church believes in, to avoid any confusion about the stance of the Coptic Orthodox Church towards gender fluidity. So we've made our stance clear to the public. That's the first thing. Not like, for example, the Catholic Church, where the Catholic Church is right now going through an internal turmoil, because Pope Francis says, bless the marriage of gays and lesbians. So it became a struggle internally within the Catholic Church. There are bishops who are completely opposed to that. And what does blessing mean? Well, blessing means accept, and blessing. Why would you bless something that is evil? There is nothing that's called bless something that is evil. So from the first aspect is, we as a diocese and a church, we have been very clear in terms, and even the Holy Synod, I think Abuna just yesterday or 2 days ago published something around this particular topic to make sure that it is very clear. The second aspect of it is, how are we preparing our families to address what the children bring back from school? And we have a family, a newcomer family from, for example, from Egypt in our congregation. They just came 6 or 8 months ago, and they have 3 children. And one of them is in grade, Veronica will remember, grade 7? It's grade 7. And the parents are just, he's coming back, this boy is coming back with a lot of interesting things they have never heard before. And they are struggling. So how are we as a church? And this is just one example. Even people who have been here for many, many years, parents who have been here in Canada for 20, 30 years, still, I think we have a gap in terms of equipping families to address these comments that are coming back and these teachings that are coming back from school. So that's another element. And there is the pastoral element. This is the priests. How can fathers, the fathers of confession, handle some of the issues that come up under this broader agenda from a pastoral perspective? And again, we've had meetings with His Grace Bishop Mina and the fathers on what are the best approaches, what are resources available to us as fathers to kind of prepare ourselves to handle these kinds of situations as they arise. But I personally think the biggest gap right now is the family. The family is the first line of defense. The home is the first line of defense. Not Sunday school, not the retreats. With all due respect, these are very important. But families are with these kids day in and day out. They should be asking their children, what did you hear today at school? What did you, and discuss these things with an open mind, but also in a way that does not enshrine these ideologies in the minds of the children early enough. Early enough. I had a family, a father and a mother who came to me and says, our son has 2 friends that are gay. What do we do? That's an open-ended question. What should we tell him? Should we tell him to stop being friends with them? Should we tell him to continue to be friends with them, but tell him what they are doing is sinful? What should we do? These kind of scenarios, I think, if we as a community spend the time and energy to put these questions and these scenarios down and provide the answer that is most appropriate, no different than what we've done today. No different than what we've done tonight. These are scenarios, real cases. So when we help answer these questions, I think we'll be in a much better. So it's not just the public speaking and saying we denounce this. Okay, fine, but that's not the answer to everything. Start from within. When you safeguard what's inside, then defending what's outside becomes a lot easier and less important. Any other questions? Any comments? Abuna? Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to erase this completely. Okay.
Thank you, Bona. And I repeat this mistake of WhatsApp not coming for us for 2 years. It's not going to happen again. No. we want you again, Bona. Thank you, Bona.